Welcome to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, a naturopathic physician and your guide to a new health reality, one that connects body, mind, and spirit. Together, we'll dive deep into the art and science of holistic healing. Through working with hundreds of women through midlife transitions, I've discovered something profound. Most of our physical and emotional challenges are rooted in a maladaptive stress response, and true healing begins when we regulate our nervous system. Each episode will explore complex health topics in simple, empowering ways, uncover the deeper wisdom within each of us, and share practical tools for nervous system regulation to help you awaken your vital force and create lasting wellness. So, if you're ready to reconnect with yourself, your health, and your purpose, let's begin this journey together so you can experience life more fully human and deeply healed.
Did you know that perimenopausal women are nearly twice as likely to experience depression compared to premenopausal women? And up to 70% of women report noticeable mood changes during this transition. And yet, so many of us are told it's just stress, it's just part of normal aging, or it's all in our head. Welcome back to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, and today we're diving into the root causes of what I call inflammatory depression. Inflammatory depression is a kind of mood disruption that's deeply physiological. It's not just a matter of brain chemistry, it's inflammation and it's hormone signaling. It's mitochondrial breakdown and it's nervous system dysregulation that's often been happening for years and sometimes silently until something finally gives. And that something typically finally gives during perimenopause and the menopause transition. The good news is that you can heal and you can absolutely feel better. In my practice as a naturopathic physician, I often see hormonal imbalances misdiagnosed as depression. Many of the most common symptoms of perimenopausal depression, such as low mood, anxiety, disrupted sleep, brain fog, fatigue, and even panic attacks that might come and go unexpectedly, can overlap with hormonal imbalances. They can overlap with thyroid dysfunction, adrenal burnout, and neurotransmitter depletion. And this is one of the reasons that so many women are misdiagnosed. What's dismissed as just depression or low mood or stress is often an unrecognized endocrine or terrain-based imbalance. We've talked in previous episodes about how estrogen, progesterone, thyroid hormones, cortisol, DHEA, pregnenolone, and even testosterone all affect the brain. So when these hormones are shifting, and certainly when they're shifting and maybe not being tested or understood contextually, women can often be handed or offered an SSRI or essentially a medication or a pill rather than a real solution to address the symptom and the root cause. This is something I'm so passionate about because every single day I speak with women, whether it's on a discovery call or in an office visit, about their changes in mood and mood fluctuations they're experiencing during perimenopause and menopause. And way more often than not, they have been handed a pill or told, here, you can take this medication without anything else really being looked into. And this is something that I want all women to know. There are other options. There are answers to why your mood might be fluctuating. And when we uncover these root causes and we talk about laying the foundations for health, it is amazing how mood lifts and no longer are these patients struggling with irritability, depression, sleep issues, brain fog, right? So there absolutely are things that can be done. I very often talk with women about how depression can really be our brain on fire. So let's start with what we know from decades of research, and that's that depression is not just a chemical imbalance. It is absolutely an inflammatory condition. Across every type of depression, from major depressive disorder, trauma-linked depression, postpartum, and yes, perimenopausal depression, we see chronic low-grade inflammation. We've talked all about inflammation in our previous episodes on lab work, right? So things like elevated cytokines, interleukin-6, for example, tumor necrosis factor alpha, these are things that I run in labs when a patient is telling that they're experiencing a low mood or new depression through perimenopause. Also, we've talked a lot about HSCRP or high sensitivity C reactive protein. Even if you've had a standard CRP done, you will often see that these numbers are going up. They are elevated when a patient is experiencing depression or low mood. And these can go unnoticed unless you are looking for them. I track these in every patient every single year. Now, this is going to be linked to microglial activation as well, which just means that the brain's immune system is stuck in on mode. And this will lead to blood brain barrier dysfunction, allowing inflammatory molecules to enter and disrupt brain signaling. All of these can be occurring during the perimenopausal transition and certainly during hormonal fluctuations at other stages of life as well. Now, inflammatory signals are going to blunt serotonin receptors. They're going to reduce dopamine availability, impair glutamate balance, all while draining mitochondria of their energy, contributing to brain fog, fatigue, and even emotional flatness. This can all be a result of inflammation. But here's something really cool. Low omega-3 intake has been shown to correlate with higher rates of depression, and studies have shown that omega-3s are just as effective as SSRIs in certain cases. So in my world, we use omegas very often to lower or reduce inflammation. I will also test for omegas, and can be such a profound change in a patient's mood when we stabilize those levels. So there are some of the ways that we will see inflammation show up, and a very simple strategy to reduce that inflammation is increasing intake of omega-3s. But what's causing this inflammation in the first place? So, say you go back and you listen to the episode on labs to run, and you're struggling with low mood, and you do find that you have inflammation in your labs. Well, how did that come about? Well, we know that that inflammation can contribute to perimenopausal depression, so we also know that we want to reverse it, right? As a naturopathic physician, I'm always looking for terrain level disruptions. So here are the biggest culprits that I see again and again in my clinical work as contributors to that inflammation. Number one is gut dysfunction and leaky gut. So, intestinal permeability, or an increase in the permeability across that barrier of our gut, is going to allow toxins like lipopolysaccharides or endotoxins to leak into circulation. This will increase levels of systemic inflammation. This can trigger immune activation and essentially that chronic low grade inflammation that will show up in labs. This leaky gut or higher levels of intestinal permeability can be tied to antibiotic use, food sensitivities and allergies, dysbiotic overgrowth such as candida, SIBO, or even high levels of stress. This is why step one in the Vital Spirit method, when we're working on that gut brain axis, is to recognize and remove sources of inflammation. This is step one for everyone. And guess what? It's really helpful if you're struggling with depression. Next is blood sugar imbalance. So when we have high levels of insulin, when we have blood sugar spikes and crashes, maybe from a high sugar diet or having unopposed carbohydrates, or maybe not eating enough, and then remember our body makes cortisol to pull sugar from our liver. Well, all of these spikes and crashes are going to lead to inflammatory cytokine release. These inflammatory cytokines are creating low levels of inflammation when they're constantly being released in response to these blood sugar spikes and crashes. And this affects our brain directly, and it's going to worsen mood swings, cravings, and energy dips. Very often, as I'm cleaning up patients' diets and they have shown signs of blood sugar dysregulation in labs, such as high insulin, they will notice how drastically mood stabilizes and improves essentially when those blood sugar spikes and crashes are removed. Next is hormonal shifts and declines. So, estrogen and progesterone can have an anti inflammatory role in our body. And so, as they're declining, again, that's going to lead to increased cytokine expression or inflammation, oxidative stress, and poor brain signaling. This is really amplified when our adrenal glands are also tired or when pregnenolone is depleted, for example. Next is chronic stress and nervous system dysregulation. So, chronically being in that activated sympathetic fight or flight, which we've talked all about in previous episodes, is suppressing the vagus nerve and also reducing our ability to respond to inflammation. So, low vagal tone is going to lead to poor anti inflammatory signaling, poor digestion, sleep disruption, and mood lability. Additionally, a trauma history or emotional suppression or dysregulation, or that inability to have flexibility within our nervous system state, is also going to lead to inflammation, as well as environmental toxins and mitochondrial load. So, we've talked all about cell danger response, right? We've talked about how toxins will burden our body and create an inflammatory cascade, blocking detox and further triggering neuroinflammation. Certainly, there will be nutrient deficiencies that can lead to inflammation, and inflammation, especially in the gut, might lead to nutrient deficiencies, such as those omega 3s, which are needed for brain repair and immune balance, and essentially a healthy nervous system. And then, last, poor sleep and circadian disruption. When we don't have enough melatonin, or maybe our melatonin isn't rising at night, telling our cortisol, time to go down, it's time to go to sleep, and we're not getting deep, restful sleep, then we're not activating our lymphatic system, and inflammatory debris in the brain essentially is going to build up and contribute to brain fog, fatigue, and low mood. So, again, through the Vital Spirit method, we are working on all of these root causes of inflammation. Now, this leads us to speak a little bit in more detail around sleep and the lymphatic system and how this is going to impact our mood through perimenopause. And essentially, the lymphatic system is our brain's drainage or detox system. This cleans out waste and toxins from the brain, but it only works during deep, uninterrupted sleep. Now, remember, progesterone, which promotes GABA, our calming inhibitory neurotransmitter, supports restorative sleep. So, as progesterone begins to decline through perimenopause, and especially in early perimenopause, many women are going to begin to struggle with fragmented sleep, inability to fall asleep, therefore that poor brain detox and accumulated neuroinflammation. Very often these women are saying, I'm waking between 2 and 4 a.m., and they're just not getting that detoxification process happening during deep restful sleep. Now, at that same time, she might also be experiencing estrogen fluctuations, which are impacting serotonin and dopamine. So, estrogen promotes neuroplasticity and it helps detoxify the brain. So, when both estrogen and progesterone are declining or fluctuating erratically, then you're looking at poor sleep, declining neurotransmitter signaling, increased brain inflammation, and definitely vulnerability to mood imbalances. So it's certainly not all in your head, it's in your hormones, and it's in your brain's ability to clean itself while you sleep. Now, PET scans have shown, so images of the brain have shown that there is a metabolic decline of the brain in midlife. So in perimenopause, women enter what's called cerebrohypometabolism. This just means that the brain literally slows down its glucose metabolism, which can contribute to memory lapses, word finding issues, cognitive fatigue, and emotional blunting. So kind of feeling flat affect. If I think this might be going on, some of the key functional markers that I'm going to look at are insulin resistance. So, is the brain reducing its glucose uptake? Hot flashes and night sweats, which are going to be correlated with a higher cardiometabolic and neuropsychiatric risk. I'm asking questions about ferritin that pops up again, right? That low ferritin can lead to fatigue and low mood. I'm absolutely making sure that that full thyroid panel has been done. Go back to our episode on thyroid. Remember, especially T3. An underfunctioning thyroid will also contribute to low mood. You might be cold, have sluggish digestion. And certainly I'm looking at B vitamin status, especially B6, B12, and folate, which are going to impair neurotransmitter production if they're deficient. And I'm absolutely looking at pregnenolone. Remember that mother hormone, which is associated with PTSD and major depressive disorder risk. So when a patient comes into me through perimenopause or menopause, I don't just ask about how they're feeling when they might be expressing low mood or struggles with depression. I'm really making sure that we do a full workup and we look for root causes, not just inflammation. Although I think inflammation is probably key in almost every single low mood patient that I see. And I do just want to touch on the fact that I think there's a time and a place to discuss psychedelic use. I wrote my thesis on this in 2013 as part of my naturopathic degree. And I think we're in such a renaissance in this realm right now. There's so many more studies than when I wrote that thesis. It's not just about pharmaceuticals. If maybe you've worked up the therapeutic order and you've worked on your seeds of health and we've looked at root cause labs, there are other options out there as well. CBD shows some great promising results for PTSD, sleep, and anxiety. And there's a great 2021 study done on psilocybin, and it has been shown to significantly reduce symptoms of treatment-resistant depression. It does so by working on the 5-HT2A serotonin receptors, and it's going to enhance emotional processing and neuroplasticity. Certainly, these tools are not for everyone. Set and setting are key, and I think responsible therapeutic guidance is key. But I always want patients to know that there are a lot of options out there, and it doesn't always just look like a pharmaceutical pill if they're not getting relief from their depression through perimenopause. Now, of course, I'm going to think all about nutrients and herbs and psychobiotics and homeopathy. So I do want to touch on some of those and some of the ones that I might use through perimenopause when a patient has low mood. So I did mention a couple already when we're considering what labs to run, and those would be your B vitamins. So a nice, well-rounded B complex with your active Bs can be a game changer for some women. They're going to help with neurotransmitter production and methylation. So considering magnesium, whether that's glycinate for anxiety or threonate, which crosses the blood-brain barrier. You might consider supplements like taurine and vitamin C. You might look into supporting your adrenals with some nutrients that are required to make your stress hormone cortisol. You might consider zinc for healthy serotonin synthesis, tyrosine maybe for dopamine support. I'll often use NAC or N-acetylcysteine, which is a glutathione precursor, and I will frequently use that in depression, especially when there are signs of OCD as well. And you might consider pregnenolone, again, that neurosteroid. I'm always testing for levels of pregnenolone when mood is low, and certainly your omegas. So they're going to reduce inflammation and improve cell membrane fluidity and have been shown to increase mood. I might use specific psychobiotics, so strains of probiotic that are gut-brain specific. So I might be looking to enhance GABA activity or reduce stress with certain strains of lactobacillus or bifidobacteria. I might be looking to reduce systemic inflammation, again, by balancing that gut microbiome. Some of my favorite herbs when I'm using herbal medicine to support mood are saffron. Also, St. John's wort is one of my favorites to use, but you do have to be careful. It does interact with some medications. And I'll often use rhodiola when I'm trying to boost energy and motivation, or I'll use ashwagandha when I'm looking to support healthy cortisol, maybe some long-term adaptogenic or stress support. I'll frequently use lemon balm. I love lemon balm and passion flower tea when we're looking to calm the gut brain axis and slow down that kind of monkey mind and support healthy mood. I might use holy basil that will help calm the central nervous system and also boosting mood through reducing inflammation and supporting a healthy stress response. I'll sometimes use bacopa for its neuroprotective and adaptogenic qualities. And I'm definitely typically considering curcumin, turmeric in diet as an anti-inflammatory and mood stabilizing support. Very often, I will utilize homeopathic remedies, especially to work on the emotional root cause of depression, especially when that is kind of tied into unresolved grief or perfectionism or that soul exhaustion that we've talked about in some previous episodes. So, some of the remedies that I'll commonly use might be Ignatia. I'll typically use that for acute grief, emotional suppression, if that patient is sighing a lot. I'll use sepia in hormone depleted women. They can often feel numb or irritability around family. I'll use Natrum muriaticum for that silent grief, really high functioning emotional suppression. I'll use phosphoric acid when there's flatness or burnout after a trauma. I'll use lachesis when there's intense emotion, rage, PMS, or mood swings around your period. I'll use pulsatilla in more emotional sensitivity. In that patient that really desires comfort, they'll often feel better outside in fresh air. I'll use Orem when there's a deeper level of despair. Very often, those women feel like they're a failure in other aspects of life outside of the health condition that we're working on. I'll use Thuya in perfectionism, very often when there's an autoimmune component or if that patient has history of warts. And I'll use carcinosin in more of an inherited trauma situation and emotional suppression. Now, I would be using these homeopathic remedies or herbal medicine supports alongside nervous system practices like the safe and sound protocol, which we've talked about in a previous episode. I might be using practices like journaling or breath work, and these can really be a catalyst for some deep emotional unwinding, especially when there's an emotional root cause to the low mood. And we can't forget our nature cure, nature as medicine, right? So, morning sunlight is a great way to boost serotonin, and it really helps to set your circadian rhythm. I do recommend light box therapy in the winter here for patients that have lower mood, but really just being aware that getting out in the sun can be such a profound mood booster. And I'll often use hydrotherapy as well. So, that can range from Epsom salt baths to using castor oil packs and contrast showers, really just using water as medicine, getting out into the water as the weather warms up, and if you're able to, can be a great way to boost mood and connect with nature and regulate cortisol and healthy neurotransmitters as well. Of course, grounding, so walking barefoot, forest bathing, again, helping with healthy cortisol patterns and rhythms, getting out into nature, and having all of that wonderful neurotransmitter support and mood boost from being actually in nature is also a great time to incorporate things like breath work and movement for sure. One of the most profound things we can do for our mood is to move our body. So sometimes that can be hard if we don't have the motivation to get up and move, but movement and especially movement outside is going to be key in any holistic plan to improve mood. And as I mentioned, that safe and sound protocol. So if you don't have access to that, you can look at other vagal toning exercises, humming, co-regulation, work with another safe nervous system. So that might be someone who's safe that you trust, that you can hug or chat with. It might be a pet. All of these are going to help with boosting our mood. So let's do a quick little case study. So let me tell you about a patient who was 43. We'll call her Anne. And she came in exhausted, brain foggy, and feeling very hopeless. Her doctor had said that she was depressed and had recommended she consider going on an SSRI, but she had never struggled with depression before, and she didn't feel like an SSRI was the solution. She really wanted to know, okay, why am I struggling with this now? I've never had these feelings or thoughts before. She felt like her low mood was definitely physical in the sense that she felt so tired that she felt like that was impacting her low mood. She didn't feel like she could do the things that she was able to do before. And so she really wanted some other answers. She wanted to at least ask some other questions around why she was experiencing this low mood. So, as I've explained before, when I work with a new patient, I do start with the gut brain axis and a full initial new patient workup. And so, upon doing that and getting to know her as a patient, we did discover that she had an elevated HSCRP. It was a 5.6. So, she had signs of systemic inflammation. She had low ferritin. Remember that storage form of iron that was at an 18. She also had low B12, which came up on her methylmalonic acid screen. She had low pregnenolone, so that's that pro-hormone precursor to all of your other steroid sex hormones. And she had some signs of insulin resistance. So she described some hypoglycemic states and had some sugar cravings. I can't remember what her insulin number was exactly, but let's just say she had some insulin resistance. And she had some symptoms of night sweats, difficulty sleeping, and what I would describe as some gut inflammation or discomfort. So, as I start with every patient, we started on some gut repair and inflammation reduction. So, as we worked on healing her gut, my goal was to see some of those nutrient deficiencies, which were likely contributing to her low mood, stabilize. Now, as we were doing that, I did use some supplementation and some herbal support. So, we had started on saffron, magnesium glycinate, morning sunlight, and contrast showers after her morning sunlight, the safe and sound protocol, and journaling and mirror work, where she was essentially just looking in the mirror and practicing a loving kindness meditation. And so, just through working on her gut health, working on some of the inflammation that we saw in labs and nutrient deficiencies, and having some nervous system regulating practices, her mood did drastically improve. She also did start to incorporate daily movement, which is not something that she had been doing before. And we tracked her labs. We saw her inflammation go down as her mood was going up. And it's a great example of how our mood, and especially our low mood, can be a reflection of the inflammation that's going on in our body. And with some basic foundational changes, and certainly with paying attention to labs and knowing in context what those labs might mean as far as how they're manifesting in low mood, we were really able to target some key changes that were sustainable and doable for her. So I especially want you to think about midlife depression not as a broken brain or a deficiency, but it's your body out of balance. It can be an inflamed system. It can be a sign from your body that some needs haven't been met. Maybe there are some deficiencies, and certainly maybe there are things contributing to inflammation that if you address, if you don't suppress the signal and you hear your mind body saying, "Hi, I need something different here," then you can actually prevent other health conditions from occurring in the future, and you can optimize your mental health through midlife and beyond. So, if you're ready to begin your healing journey to restore your terrain and reclaim your vitality, then I encourage you to download my free vagal tone guide, where you can discover practical tools and techniques that enhance your nervous system resilience and promote emotional well being. And you can also explore the vital spirit method deeper. You can go back and listen to previous episodes on this. And you can certainly reach out and book a discovery call to learn more about how the vital spirit method can help you navigate low mood in perimenopause and beyond. So please, if you enjoyed this, download and subscribe so that you don't miss any. Send it to a friend. And if you feel so inclined, leave a review. And until next time, stay rooted and radiant and have a great day.